Welcome to the Men's Forum. I'm your host, Gary Costanza, and tonight we have a distinguished guest with us, the director, the Greater New York chapter of the National Coalition of Free Men, Mark Sutton. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, Gary.
Tonight, the title of our show is Domestic Violence Myths and Facts, and we're going to discuss a little bit about what the truth is about domestic violence in the world, in this country, as they relate to men and women. And what spurred this on is actually there was a domestic violence rally in Battery Park in New York City. That was October 26th of 2003, just a couple of months ago, I believe. And Mark and I and another member of our group, the National Coalition of Free Men, covered it. We wanted to really go and see what is being espoused as to what domestic violence is, what the truth is as they see it, and if we could give our input.
And it was interesting to see that there was actually a really wide variety of reactions to our point of view, and I thought that was quite interesting. Most of it was positive, though, I would say, wouldn't you?
Well, I think because we really got on the personal level to a one-on-one or group to group, actually. We had a nice little discussion amongst us, and they were willing to hear us.
Most of them.
Yeah.
Most of them were willing to at least listen. A couple of them got kind of freaked out. Somebody questioned their reality.
They did. We did bring our camera, and as our viewers will see later, we're going to show a few short clips of what happened and people's reactions.
Right.
But I think on an individual basis, most of these people, as most Americans see, that it's not a black and white issue. It's a very complex issue. Domestic violence, first of all, we try to nail down what that term means to each person or each group. And we got a myriad of answers, didn't we?
Right, and it's another, it's similar to some of the other legal problems that men face, is that the definition is expanding and more men get thrown in jail for things that they can be accused of. So, for instance, there's something now called the Duluth Wheel, which is this wheel of violence. It now includes all sorts of things from intimidation, destroying somebody else's property. So, for instance, if according to their definition, I'm certainly the victim of domestic abuse based on this plan. I mean, I think everyone in the country would be a victim.
Exactly.
According to this model.
We are all victims.
Yeah.
And so wouldn't that be 50-50 on the gender wheel?
Let me give you an example of some of these expanded definition of domestic violence.
Oh, boy.
One of them was if you destroy the property of a spouse or partner, that's considered domestic abuse. Now, if somebody takes your pencil and snaps it in half, that would be considered domestic abuse by this model. And I think we were getting a little carried away when we say that anything such small as breaking a pencil is considered domestic abuse. I think that's wrong. It's often talked about emotional abuse, and I think that is a very good factor, but I think we have to draw a distinction because, again, how many people have been in a relationship that started to go sour, and you get into verbal fights with the other person? Well, wouldn't both parties at that point be, verbal abuse? I've certainly, been abused verbally by ex-girlfriends. That has happened to me, and I would say it's probably happened to most men, that they call you a such and such, or maybe even do really nasty things to you verbally or behind your back, talking bad about you to your friends. That is a form of verbal abuse. So again, if we're going to have this very expanded definition of what domestic abuse is, then it's obviously, without a doubt, 50-50.
I think that's been expanded because of people who have an agenda.
Exactly right.
Many groups have an agenda. They want to expand it, and I think if all of us look at it in the light of day, we don't want to expand it. We want to have a clear-cut definition of what domestic violence is and what it isn't, because as you say, if you call it all these other different things, it becomes so watered down. It's the same. The perfect analogy is rape. Rape should be forcible intercourse, okay?
Right.
And nothing less, nothing more. Same with domestic violence, because if you start calling verbal abuse domestic violence, then you're locking people up for First Amendment rights.
Free speech.
We have free speech to call anybody whatever we want.
Right.
As long as it's not fire in a crowded movie house.
You can't say anything you want at any time, but you have free speech rights, which can include insulting. Yeah, you can insult your partner. That's legal.
That should be legal.
Should be legal, but it's not.
This is America.
It's different to threaten, and threatening is different. If you say, if you take one step, I'm going to kill you, that would be considered threatening speech. That's different from saying, you know what, I really don't like you. I think you're a blah, 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 blah. You know, that's different.
Well, the threat, there should be, of course, I'm sure there's a certain penalty for that, but not as great as the actual violence.
Correct. That's correct.
Intimidation, as we'll see later on, this one clip that we are going to show, we did ask, what do you call domestic violence? And as you said, they're calling it verbal abuse, destruction of someone's property, power and control. That's such a nebulous definition, power and control. Right. I mean, anybody can have that, and how do you define that? Right. And how does that damage anybody?
Well, it depends what power and control means and who's giving whom power and for what reason. I mean, yeah, exactly. It's a very difficult to pin down thing. There are controlling spouses of both genders who say, who try to intimidate the other partner, but at a certain point, if you are married to somebody and they say, I'm not going to let you see your friends, I would have to ask, first of all, how would you accept that statement? And second of all, why did you marry that person? I mean, did they change the day after you got married? I don't think so.
Exactly. People have to be held accountable for their choices.
Right. And if the person is doing that, then you have to get a divorce, and you have to leave and say, I will not accept this behavior, and leave.
Exactly.
I'm sorry.
All right, let's get down to nuts and bolts of things. Actually, what spurred us to go to this rally was because on the website, of course, the accepted percentage of men versus women being abused is women being abused 95% of the time, where men are just abused 5% of the time. And we know that almost all reputable studies show that the incidence is about 50-50. Correct, Mark?
It's very close to 50-50. The type of things that a man and a woman will do vary somewhat because men do tend to be larger and they tend to be stronger. Not all the time, though. But that is a trend that exists. Yeah. But, one thing that makes this clear, if you think of some common examples, people that everybody know. So I would say probably the most famous case of domestic abuse against a man in the country,
Phil Hartman.
No, Phil Hartman's number 2, Bobbitt.
Yes.
Yeah. This John Wayne Bobbitt case. Now, he was obviously portrayed as a bad person. A lot of feminists supported Lorena Bobbitt. I realize it's going back a few years, but I think it's something that's still important to bring up. This woman, maimed this guy. She cut off an important part of his body, and how anyone could ever argue for that. If he was a bad guy, she should, divorce him and live her life independently and say goodbye and good riddance. Exactly. If he was that bad of a guy.
Exactly. How could anybody in their right mind defend that at all? Yeah. Or without looking at any of the facts, assume that he was a bad guy, so he probably deserved it.
How often do you hear something happening to women say, oh, but she deserved it? So it's...
Why don't we just make the same assumptions for men? We don't.
We don't, and that's a very deep question that goes right to the heart of the men's movement, the National Coalition of Free Men, and the Men's Forum. Well, that's the core issue right there, that there is a belief out there that men don't need help, that men don't have problems, that men cause all the problems that do exist, that women are helpless, that women never do anything wrong, and that women have all the disadvantages in the world, and it's simply not true.
Exactly. And another very broad umbrella assumption is that we really don't care about men. Well, it's not an assumption, but this is the attitude.
Yeah, that's the attitude, exactly.
We really don't care about men. If you look at all of these problems that we're talking about, men being drafted, violence against men, men losing custody of their children, lack of reproductive rights. How about circumcision? Big issue. Right. Why don't we care about these newborn boys who are getting circumcised, having healthy tissue excised, and they're becoming mutilated?
And it has a lot of complications too. People don't talk. There are a lot of conditions that come as a result of that.
Deaths. Newborn babies die every year. On an average of 1 to 200 babies die every year for an unnecessary mutilation or surgery. It really, I think it comes down to that no society generally does not care about men, as evidenced by men coming home in body bags, because if it happened to women, we'd be up in arms. Right. That's why we have the Violence Against Women Act. Why?
Right. And there's also an expression that gets used a lot. It's never okay to hit a woman.
Perfect.
That's okay. That's wrong for two reasons. Number one, it's only talking about women. First of all, you could say it's never okay to hit a man, woman, or child, but then that's actually not true. That's one of those things that sounds great when you first hear it, but it's not true, and I'll tell you why. Because it is okay to hit a woman in certain cases, in self-defense. If a woman is coming at me with a knife, I'm going to hit her arm and knock it out of her hand to protect myself, to save my life. And a woman should do the same thing if a man is attacking her. So it is okay to hit a man or a woman in a matter of self-defense.
Exactly. Very good. Very good. Well, before we continue our discussion, why don't we show the clip that we have of our coverage of that domestic violence rally over at Battery Park, and we'll get to that right now.
Logistical question I want to ask. I've noticed that some people talk about domestic violence, and I was told about this as a DV rally, and then I've also heard that I also see family violence issues. Is the difference domestic is considered partner or spouse, and family?
Well, you can interpret it both ways, but yes, domestic violence usually is interpreted as an intimate partner abuse, whereas family violence takes in a larger group of people than only intimate partners. But you know what? Sometimes it goes back and forth.
Because family abuse,
we confuse everybody, and we sometimes confuse ourselves.
I guess to be all inclusive, you have to say domestic and family abuse. That would be it.
No, use one or the other.
One or the other. Okay. Yeah. So it's just a logistical thing.
Yeah, that's right. We use family violence because it seemed to be more inclusive. Because we're talking about like children who have witnessed abuse and teen abuse. So we
small kids get abused a lot. That's great.
Would you like any of our materials?
Sure.
This gives just sort of like a summary of it. And then we have our employment readiness program here. And our teen abuse program, which are not, the employment readiness is on here.
That's great. One thing I must say I really like about your stuff is all very gender neutral, which is good, like just your materials, which is great.
Yes, we have a number of same-sex abuse too. Although we do a lot of work with the Anti-Violence Project because they specialize in that. So it depends on the individual person where they're comfortable.
Right. Well, whoever comes to you, that's who you help. Yeah. Right. But no, we're a little bit frustrated with some of the city's promotional campaigns because we think they're fairly biased against men. Like posters like this that say, "Is it fair if your neighbor beats his wife?"
Well, the problem is, or the statistics are that such a vast majority of people who are abused are women who are abused by men. And while there are men who are abused, and there also are same-sex abuse, the vast majority are women. And so that's why, since there hasn't, that's why it's very long, because it will at least capture the larger group of people.
What are the statistics? What's men to women? Do you know?
Probably about 1 to 2%. Men to women.
Yeah.
It goes. Some statistics are as low as 85%, but most of them are between 90 and 95%. That it's men who abuse women.
And what do we consider abuse? What do we consider abuse?
Okay, power and control. And I think they even have a power and control wheel, which can give you more of it. It's not two people having a fight, not two people arguing. It's one person exercising the power and control of the other person.
So it doesn't have to be physical.
It doesn't have to be physical. Because you can intimidate somebody. We've had instances where an abuser killed a cat or a dog and said that's what's going to happen to you. Now, he hasn't touched her at all.
Yeah.
He hasn't touched her at all.
Terrible.
But she's terrified.
Yeah.
She's traumatized, terrified.
Yeah.
She knows that's intimidation. That's intimidation. And so that's one way of doing it. Of course, there are myriad of ways, unfortunately.
Our group is with a men's group with the National Coalition of Free Men, and we obviously support an end to domestic family violence, and we want to call it, of all sorts. And we think that the commonly understood statistics about the number of men who are killed or injured is inaccurate. So we're in the process of talking, dealing with the city.
They're from the Department of Justice.
We do have justice, and we think the system is flawed.
How can they do that? How can they do that?
Well, because you have a justice system that's unfairly.
They're unfairly biased against women. Talk about our alternatives to incarceration program for abused women, and you'll see the justice system is very unfair.
Give me a quick summary.
Well, there are two rules that work against women. One is called, like if you have the right to defend yourself in your own home, but you have to be able to document that you are in fear. And for battered women, many of them are in fear all the time, and it's not only in the time that the person is abusive. And so that works against women if it doesn't happen immediately after. It's the whole burning bed kind of problem that the person said, when I wake up, I'm going to kill you. And then she does that. So she's not in imminent, is she in imminent danger in the middle of the night when he said, when I wake up, I'm going to kill you. And that very often works against women because they say, well, see, she could have left. Well, she knows that it's too dangerous. So it's imminent danger. And then the other one is the fact that men and women's physical force gets used as the same, gets considered the same. And so if a man beats her up with his fist and she I've had women arrested because she tried to call 911. He pulled the telephone out of the wall so she couldn't call it. She took the telephone and threw it at him. So she used a weapon, so she's more guilty of a weapon. And so that gets used against her, even though he was the one who started them. He was the one who injured her physically. But very often those physical ones don't show up, or they don't show up for another day or two.
Well, I would say that verbal abuse is 50-50.
Yeah.
And if a man's getting verbally abused, or the woman starts physically abusing the man, what should he do? What should he do about that? There's no services for him.
Obviously. Well, yeah. I'm curious what you think about, just one more question. One thing that's happened to a lot of guys in the organization is this happens usually during a divorce case. The women were falsely accused of abandonment and violence in order to get custody of the children. Are you aware of that?
I have not seen that. I have seen more of the opposite.
Just so you know, I'm in a men's group, so I'm dealing with a lot of that a lot of times. A lot of men's lives have been ruined by false claims of domestic abuse. But anyway, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a lot. Nice talking to you. You're doing good work. Welcome back. Well, we had fun doing that. I think that was something we really needed to do. I mean, we were really the only ones there with signs showing that men are victims too. What were the signs that we had there?
We had 4 signs. One said men don't report.
Right.
Another said
abuse is 50-50.
Right.
Don't demonize men.
Don't demonize men. That's a good one.
Yeah.
And again, I think of all the signs, that was, I think, the biggest one, because that's what's really happening, and that cuts across all the issues, cuts across every issue of the spectrum.
It's too bad that there weren't much more men out there doing
right.
this.
And there was a woman with us too. One of the 3 of us, Stephanie Sellers, we should give her credit. She came out to support our cause and recognize this as a gender-balanced issue, not a one gender versus the other issue. And I think, you know, we should give credit to women, because there are a lot of women who are supporting our cause, which is why I hope for a day, hopefully in the near future, when gender issues are seen as men and women coming together to discuss the issues that they have to face because of their gender, as opposed to, you know, women fighting for their rights and men fighting for their rights, and it's sort of a clash. I'd like it to be a more meeting at the table.
Well, I think that we're being more magnanimous than any of the women's groups.
I believe so.
Because when we do bring these issues to them, we're faced with hostility, incredulity. And let me give an example of something else that's happening, that if the roles were reversed, there would be a big problem with it. There's a T-shirt that's created by a company called David and Goliath, and here's what the T-shirt says. It says, "Boys are stupid, throw rocks at them." Now, this shirt has sold millions. There are millions of these shirts out there. They're made specifically for little girls. My God, horrible. It's horrible. Could you imagine if there were shirts being sold to little boys that said, "Girls are stupid, throw rocks at them"? Yeah. And it has, the image on this shirt is of a little boy running away with rocks, coming at his head like he's about to be pelted. Real funny. Real funny, yeah. And so somehow, where's Gloria Steinem on this issue? Yeah. Where is Gloria Allred? Come on. Yeah. If you're going to jump on the bandwagon the other way, let's be both ways. But you don't hear one feminist issuing one peep about this. And if those people like Gloria Allred, who's a man-hater, and Gloria Steinem, who used to hate men but realized she doesn't, she finally got married. I guess a fish does need a bicycle. Very good. Okay. But if these people really cared about men, they would be on TV and yelling just as loudly when they see an injustice against boys. There's no defense for a T-shirt like this, and there's a boycott going on. I think we should compliment Glenn Sachs. He has a radio show called On His Side with Glenn Sachs. I believe it's His Side with Glenn Sachs, and they've done a boycott of a store in Seattle that sells this shirt, and they've successfully gotten the shirt removed from the racks. So men need to come together, and we can fight things like this that promotes violence against boys. We sure can. Yes, we should all congratulate Glenn Sachs for him on his show. you can go to his website, hisside.com,
Yep.
be a contributor, be a supporter. This is how things do happen. We do have to all come together.
Right, and it's really grassroots movement shows like this show and other shows around that, this is a local access show, but, somebody might hear this, and the idea grows and grows and grows.
Exactly, and we get like key members, key activists that can change the world.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a million people.
It's going to start somewhere, and this is where it's starting.
Mark, we've run out of time, so do you have any parting words?
I would just like to say, if anyone out there is interested in learning more about these issues, please go ahead and go to our website. Our national site is ncfm.org. That's the National Coalition of Free Men, and our local site is themailvoice.org, which is the New York chapter.
Excellent. Mark, thanks again for appearing on the show.
Thank you so much, Gary.
As usual.
All right, thanks.
Good night from us at the Men's Forum.